Well, as Donald Trump speaks in San Diego, he's also making some headlines across the country in the state of Florida in that Senate contest. There is a very crowded Republican field in the race to succeed Marco Rubio, but that group might add apparently another new name, Marco Rubio. After he got out of the presidential race, Rubio was adamant, not seeking re-election, no chance, no how. Got to go make money. But here's what's happened since yesterday morning. Senate Foreign Relations Chairman Bob Corker publicly called for Rubio to seek another term. This followed a closed-door Senate meeting of Republicans where several members discussed their hope that Rubio would run. Sort of started with Mitch McConnell, believe it or not. That afternoon, Rubio then told CNN he was open to speaking on behalf of Donald Trump at the Republican convention and that he wanted to be, quote, helpful. That is, yes, Marco Rubio pledging his support to the man he memorably sparred with on the debate stage. That CNN interview aired at 4 p.m. Here's what Donald Trump tweeted around 10 p.m. Poll data shows that Marco Rubio does by far the best in holding on to his Senate seat in Florida. Important to keep the majority. Run, Marco. Okay, run, Marco. Just Marco, not little Marco. In the past, Rubio said he is staying out of the race because his good friend and Florida Lieutenant Governor Carlos Lopez Cantera is running to succeed him. But if Cantera wasn't in the race, what would happen? Well, this is what Rubio told Jake Tapper.
If you didn't have a friend running, might you reconsider?
Maybe. I mean,
but he's a friend. He's an actual friend, not a politics friend, like a real friend.
No, personal. I've known him since the Dole campaign in '95, '96 as college students. So, and but sure, I mean, maybe. I mean, I enjoy my work in the Senate. I enjoy it tremendously. I always did.
Well, something's up here, huh? Are Senate Republicans, together with Donald Trump, trying to orchestrate a draft of Rubio? Joining me now is Brad Todd, a Republican strategist with a lot of ties to the state of Florida, and Democratic strategist Jamal Simmons, who himself has got some ties to the state of Florida as a former press secretary to former Florida Senator Bob Graham. Welcome to you both. Brad, I got to start with you.
Sure.
There are, I believe, as many people running for the Republican nomination in Florida for the Senate as they ran for president at one time. It is a pretty crowded field.
Well, it is. I mean, it's the Madison Square Garden of American politics. It's the swingest of the swing states, and so
there's 3 or 4 congressmen. 3 or 4 swing states. There's a lieutenant governor. There's diversity in the field. There's a lot of stuff going on.
It's a race worth entering. You know, the Florida races go down to the wire. They're very intense. It has a robust political culture. It's a race worth being in.
And Jamal, part of me wonders that it doesn't matter who the nominees are for a open Senate race in a swing state like Florida, because it is really hard to overperform or underperform your presidential candidate by more than 2 or 3 points, particularly in the state of Florida.
That probably makes sense, which is why the real challenge for the Democrats in that race is going to be getting those Bernie voters who might be left out there somewhere to come back to Hillary or come to Hillary Clinton so that the Senate candidate can actually maximize it and make it work. But I think that we're going to end up with Murphy as a Senate candidate. It looks like he's.
Well, you got your own issues here with
all the right work.
Sounds like you just asked for Grayson to blow those Bernie voters.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, look, the Democrats have their own potential challenge with Alan Grace, but let's go back to this Marco Rubio thing. It seems like it may feel good in the moment when a bunch of people want you to run after your ego's been bruised, but this would be a hard race. I think a harder race for him to win than he thinks.
Every race in Florida is hard, first off. Yeah. And secondly, he'd have a primary and he'd have a general.
Not everybody gets out.
Not everyone gets out.
Rubio.
The field does not get cleared for Jeb Bush, for Marco Rubio, for anyone. You know, Don Shula. No one could clear this field. And so I think he has to take that in consideration. He also starts with $0 in his hard federal account.
Right.
It is a very late in the year. The second quarter is almost over, and he has $0. And so it's a very expensive state, a lot of large media markets. This is not the kind of thing you do on a whim.
But my question, Chuck, is why does he even want to do this if you're Marco Rubio? If you're thinking about maybe Donald Trump doesn't win, I've got a shot 4 years from now. Do I want to run a race I could possibly lose when I could stay out and I could maybe make a little bit of money and run for president?
This strikes me as less about Rubio and more of Mitch McConnell panicking about the Florida Senate race. I mean, that's what because this all stemmed from, my reporting says, this sort of all truly began at a Senate Republican conference where literally McConnell basically embarrassed Rubio in front of the who wants him to run, and everybody's hand went, and then it became this. It's clear this was not a gee whiz moment.
Well, Washington's a swamp, and swamps have fevers, especially in the summertime. You know, it's 88 degrees.
Look at you.
And so it's,
I take it you don't like this move.
No, I think it's a typical thing that happens in Washington. You know, in 2010, Washington political elites decided that Charlie Crist was the ideal candidate for Senate, and Marco Rubio said, I have a better idea, and the Florida voters agreed with him. So I think that that's what happens here as well. Democrats are great at rigging primaries. They're almost undefeated.
Well, they are better. No, but he's right about the establishment has had better luck pushing people out.
You can't herd
Ask Kendrick Meek
Republicans.
about that.
Yeah, you can't herd Republicans, and so it's really impossible to rig one.
You know, it's interesting here, though. Patrick Murphy, the gentleman you mentioned, the person that the Democratic elites hope win the nomination against Alan Grayson, and by the way, that's going to be a nasty fight. But he put out a statement already that essentially said, oh, Marco Rubio wants to come into a job he didn't like.
Right.
That to me sounds like a pretty easy attack line for the Democratic nominee in the fall. And I don't know how Rubio overcomes that.
It is an easy attack line. Rubio's Senate record will become a very big issue. And then the question becomes, you know, what does he run on? He wants to go back there and do what? Why didn't he just make that choice on his own?
Do this, Brad. You're, as a Republican strategist, how would you counsel Rubio to sort of get out of his rhetorical bind?
I don't think he's in one. You know, look, he has been footloose here since he left the presidential race. He Twitter storm.
He's been tweeting. He's on a tweet storm right now. Come on, Marco, respond to me.
And I think
the Cobras, they always stunk in high school football, buddy. No.
I think he's had a lot of fun since he left the presidential race. I suspect he's having a little fun right now, and you know, he's trying to make sure his organization's still together. He's still not done in politics. I just don't think it's this race.
But Jamal, Rubio on the ticket does help Trump, makes it a little bit harder for Hillary Clinton in Florida, does it not?
Well, Florida's going to be harder, I think, regardless, just because it always is. And so, you know, she's going to need every help she can get to make it win.
To me, it made sense that Trump wanted him on there.
Sure.
Yeah, I could use a little Hispanic help in the state.
You got 2 Hispanic candidates in the race already.
Although the Hispanics that the Democrats go after are not the Marco Rubio Latinos.
They're not, but Marco Rubio's done a better job of trying to speak to them in the I-4 corridor in ways. I mean, look what he's been doing in Puerto Rico.
Well, and Governor Scott broke even with the Hispanic vote in Florida. It's a very different Hispanic vote than it is in other states.
It's very complicated, and it's different in different places. Jamal Simmons, Brad Todd. Always fun to do a little politics. We bored everybody in the 49ers.